Oh, okay. Hi, welcome to KGB Bar. We've got Nandini Bhattacharya, hope I said that properly, who's headlining tonight, and joined by her friends Tori Reynolds and Usha Akella. So Nandini's going to start the evening, and she's reading from her debut novel, Love's Garden. And it's an historical drama about war, love, friendship, and sacrifice in 20th century India during its fight against British rule. She was born and raised in India and has called the United States her second continent for the last 30 years. Wherever she's lived, she's generally turned to books for answers to life's big and small questions. Her short stories have been published in Meat for Tea, The Valley Review, Storyscape Journal, Raising Mothers, The Bacon Review, The Bangalore Review, Oi Drum, and Ozone Park Journal. She's attended the Breadloaf Writers Workshop and held residences at the Vermont Studio Center and Craig Garden Writers Residency. Love's Garden is her first novel. She's currently working on a second novel about love, racism, xenophobia, and other mysteries, titled Homeland Blues. She lives outside Houston with her family and two marmalade cats. You can read more about her work and interests on her website. Welcome, Nandini.
Thank you so much, Lori, and thanks to everyone, Usha and Tori especially, for joining me tonight. It's less nerve-wracking because of you, and I'm really looking forward to your poetry because you are both fantastic poets. I will start by saying that a novel that spans most of the 20th century, like Love's Garden does, is bound to be and probably had better be about many things. But to me, mainly, it's about women and men loving, losing, and surviving in a world where love seems to be a kind of warfare, and war seems to be about loving something. So, without more ado, I'm just going to read samples from the novel of that aerial perspective on love, life, and war. Chapter 1. In the year 1898, in a corner of Britain's far flung empire where the imperial sun is still rampant, a train snakes through a vast plain checkered by bronze, green, and ochre fields of wheat, corn, and millet. A woman stumbles through the train passing compartments, peering into some, trying to reach the engine at the front. Her name is Saroj, and she wants to stop the train. Stop the train. Get off. How can this be happening? Why hasn't Munia come? She promised she would come without fail. Munia knows the stake. She swore on her honor and her love. People are sleeping, seated, slumped, stretched out, some with their entire bodies and heads covered with makeshift sheets, others in ugly positions that bring no shame only to the utterly oblivious. The train is completely dark. Here and there, Saroj hears a moan, a whimper, even a low droning. Is that an infant crying, though? Saroj freezes for a long second. No, it's a little girl who has fallen off a bunk. She's lying sprawled on the dirty floor, sobbing as if getting up without her mother's remorseful help is out of the question. Saroj can't wait, can't stop, can't step into the compartment and help her up. No time to lose. Saroj lurches on, forward. The engine shrieks again and again as it shreds the night. Saroj begins to think she will not be able to reach that engine compartment where the driver and the stoker are busy urging on the machine like a trained beast. Her legs are giving way. The spirit billows out of her like smoke from an extinguished fire. All is burning. All has burned. She should have burned too. It was her fate. But she erred. She sinned. Had she sinned? Had she erred? The old agony of that dilemma stops her as if someone has just punched her in the gut. She doesn't even try to break her fall to the floor. On the gritty floor of the snaking train, taking her away from everything she has ever known or loved, Saroj dies that night inside. The next section I'd like to read you is from a time considerably later when Saroja's daughter is a great lady in wartime Calcutta. And this is her experience. Chapter 27. Time as it flows through these days, months, and years is a dreamy schizophrenic. India has been a land of 1,000 mutinies, and sometimes it feels like there will always be another one around the bend, and another, and another. And where will all these mutinies lead? Will freedom from the British really come one day? What color will be the light of that day? Shine on what? Light up the ancient, unruly land, how? Will the butchery and sacrifice of the young and the old and resistors of all stripes? Maybe her husband, Sir Noreen, is right that the bombs of terrorists shake the empire to its core and make Gandhi's peace work possible add up to independence? Independence on the minds of Indians. One day, someday, independence for India, India for Indians. People in the streets go around singing again the elegy of that 18-year-old boy from 1909. Akbar Bidai Dao Mang Ghure Ashi. His name was Khudiram Bose. 18-year-old Khudiram joined the nationalist terrorists, the Anushilon Shamiti, killed 2 English women unintentionally, was tried and convicted, went to his death erect and smiling, never quailed during his trial or his execution. In his memory, the song, Mother, give me leave now so I may get on my way. I'll hang with a smile on my face so my people can see the way. His associate, Prafulla Chaki, remained less erect. He was captured and beheaded, his head sent as assurance to the authorities of the proper execution of the rule of law in British India. Prem secretly subscribes to the nationalist organ Amrita Bazar Patrika, while Sir Noreen believes only the pro-British statesman enters the house. Prem was 9 in 1909 when Khudiram Bose, orphan schoolboy, was executed for planting a bomb intended for a British magistrate that mistakenly ended up killing 2 women. But what a bomb it was. Now she understands. That bomb snapped in half the course of revolutionary struggle between those who, led by Gandhi, wanted peaceful non-cooperation as the means to achieve freedom, and those who, like Khudiram in Bengal and later Bhagat Singh in Punjab, and yet to come, decades later, Bengal's own Subhash Chandra Bose, took up arms to force the British to quit India. Prem isn't sure who's right. As she reads Amrita Bazar, her cheeks burn, her throat tightens. There's an exhilaration in imagining the blood-curdling sounds that bring death and terror to usurpers and despots. And I'm going to read a little bit more from a chapter which is the experience of an American soldier in Calcutta during the war. His name is Amherst Buck. Chapter 54. Yellow isn't a great color in this year, 1942. This is clear to Amherst Ishiru Buck, so-called American hero of the forgotten army of the Allies in the war to end all wars. Surgeon Buck does not want to die a hero's death. He's watched friends and fellows die those. In the Burmese forest, to distract himself, he invents whole fantasy futures with girls he's never met, girls who probably wouldn't choose him anyway. It's always been like that with him. He's always looked different, neither this nor that. But when shelling starts in the forests of Noom Poom Ka, and there's nowhere to go from that impossible bluff of mountain, his company, the 2nd Battalion of the Marauders, has already been there 5 days. His heart begins to turn to ash, thinking He'll never be with a girl again at all. The Japanese are all around, shelling constantly, heavy casualties, words that sound just like words until they happen around you. Never, too, is a word like a bullet with the range of infinity. What can it possibly mean? The 2nd Battalion's perimeter, 100 by 250 yards on top of a 2,800-foot high saddle of ground that dominates the surrounding terrain, is filling with shit and gangrene. At night, the forest smells like the collective fear and rage of the men marooned on the bluff. That smell will never leave Amherst fully. Also, the smell of agony, longing, and vomit. The men sleep and wake fitfully or not at all. Their suffering feels like airlessness rather than pain. Then the Japs capture the waterhole. Then Amherst and a few others like him, yellow men, Americans with Asian mixed in, start to be sent out at dead of night to try and bring back water. The second time, Amherst's mate Sterling gets shot down. He has to leave Sterling, father's name Tanaka, mother American, old San Francisco family at the hole. He just barely gets back himself. They don't talk about death or about relief or about home or about girls, apple pie, or football games by silent pact, among the many pacts that men fighting and dying together make with one another. They can no longer bear it, but there's nothing they can do. They have to bear it. They bear it. On the 9th morning, Amherst is keeping track of the days for no reason he can name. Robbie Mook points his index finger upward at the sky. Deakins, with a foot already turning a mottled marbled maroon from where he stepped on some shrapnel 2 days ago, groans and rubs his eyes. Amherst will remember as if it's a movie he watched. Though the sun is barely visible through the trees above, bits and pieces of a leaden sky can be seen, and the occasional plane cuts through the patchy gray-blue like a silver arrow. They've run out of water 2 days ago. The waterhole is in the crosshairs of the Japanese, a few hundred feet away and below. And even if you slither to it like a worm, you risk getting a nice thwacking bullet in your noggin as you try to dip your makeshift water bag into the stinking crusted water. Sterling and his maggots are keeping guard at the approach. Case in point, his body probably is still there. Has Sterling's blood mixed with the hole's water? Probably. I'm going to pause there and let the poets take over.
Thank you, Nandini. I'm going to go ahead and tell us more about our next reader, Usha Akella. She's authored 4 books of poetry, 1 chapbook, and scripted and produced 2 musical dramas. She earned an MS in creative writing from the University of Cambridge in the UK. Her last poetry book, The Waiting, was published by Sahitya Akademi, India's highest literary authority, in 2019, followed by the Mantis Editores Mexico edition in Spanish, translated by Elsa Cross. She was selected as a creative ambassador for the city of Austin for 2019 and 2015. Her work has been included in the HarperCollins India Anthology of English Poets. She's the founder of Matwala and hosts www.thepov.com, an interview and conversations website. Matwala is the first South Asian Diaspora Poets Festival in the US that she co-directs with Pramila Venkateswaran. I'm really being challenged here with my Midwestern accent, pardon, and my Midwestern everything. The festival is seriously dedicated to increasing the visibility of South Asian poets in the mainstream. She is also the founder of the Poetry Caravan in New York and Austin, which takes poetry readings to the disadvantaged women's shelters, senior homes, and hospitals. Several hundreds of readings have reached these venues via this medium. The city of Austin proclaimed January 7th as Poetry Caravan Day. She's been published in numerous literary journals and has been invited to prestigious international poetry festivals in Houston, Romania, Canada, Slovakia, Nicaragua, Macedonia, Colombia, India, and lots more places. She has won literary prizes such as the Poetry Society of India 2019 Commendation Prize, Nazim Hikmet Award, Open Road Review Prize, and Ega Memorial Prize, and earned finalist status in a few US-based contests. She read with a group of eminent South Asian diaspora poets at the House of Lords in June 2016. She's been invited as a keynote speaker to Telon's Power of Words Conference 2019 in the Turkish Center in Austin. She's been interviewed widely, has written a few chaotic nonfiction prose pieces published in The Statesman and India Currents. Her work ranges from feminist activist to spiritual and all things in between. So welcome to tonight's reading, Usha.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Nandini, very much for inviting me. It was unexpected and sudden, but I'm really grateful to be here with you. It's surprises. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So I find that in readings, there's a tendency to repeat the same poems because some of them end up being our favorites and some of them get orphaned. So I'm trying to read a poem that I haven't read much. It's a longer poem. It's called Ordinary. And I think that will probably cover the span of my reading time. Right. So Ordinary. This face, the day, the killing of children, washing up on shores, the rape of women, the power race, the food on the table, the gargantuan piles of Granny Smiths, Bartlett pears, Haas avocados, Alaskan cruises, museums, opera, the onomatopoeia of psychosis, yoga mats, yoga bandanas, yoga water, the Mary Jane stilettos, gold embossed slippers, Zardosi, Palazzo pants, Anne Klein, Nordstrom, winter storms, the travel abroad, whatever you can afford, whatever's mine. The destination wedding, the divorce post-wedding, the vows and semi-vows, love contracted, renewed and voided, the tabloids of expose and celebrities, panty flashing, Kim Kardashian's clothes barely there, bottomly flare, Nicki Minaj's Another Day, Another Sleigh, and Angelina's adoptions, what Caitlyn Jenner Bruce wore to dinner, who's an angel, who's a sinner, what Amy Winehouse drank before she sank, and if Britney Spears snores, let's hear more. Karina's expecting, Ranbir's grieving, Sonu's on a world tour. Who's that new thing? Who's an angel? Who's a whore? Who wears what thong? Who's exciting? Who's a bore? Ding dong and a nip and a tuck and a fuck and a suck. By Bieber's doing things, you know. Look at that glow. Selena's crying and growing up fast. Oh gosh, nothing lasts but flash bulbs and paparazzi and the men from Mars, the women from Venus, the men from Venus and the women from Mars, riding their glitzy cars. Our consumption, the hungers, dinners, outlet malls, tea parties, the things in stores, the greed for this, the greed for that, to own all you own and find that one-eyed cat, the greed for other countries and the moon, and the young things want other things too soon. The slums of ribbed kids with big black eyes and our indignation, speedy deliveries via C-sections, 2 orders of McDonald's French fries, please. Ordinary, our theme parties, the shopping, the spending, the things that eat us like tuition, aging parents, culture, and identity. Find your fat-free solutions or via pill popping and the farm industry. Who's that woman crying on her closet floor? Open the door, open the door. The medical surgeries, the transplants, the man who gave birth to his brother, the 50 shades of cancer and pleasure. In your kitchen, the display of exotic plants, Ebola, ischemic stroke, COVID, colon cancer, HIV, diabetes, TB, a new epidemic, antidoped, the Ray-Bans, Gucci, Vera Bradley. Ordinary is Facebook's 5 minutes of fame, Twitter and YouTube, WhatsApp, Tumble, plastic boobs, Snapchat, Instagram, Kik, Pinterest, blogs, iPhones, selfies, Verizon's, Androids, Blackberries, God, aren't we merry in our one world nation? Kindle, chats, and live your best. Clean your desk. Let it go. Chill out. Learn to flow. Don't come knocking at my door. I smile. I smile. I've imported my kitchen tiles. What's in and what's out? The swirl in your head as you tumble about. The rabbit's worried. Time is running out. Breaking news, subscriptions, serial killing, school shootings, millions of views, deportations, GOP nominees. Trump wanted the vacant chair. Was he crowned by Miss Universes in evening gowns? The talent in reality shows, the singing voices, the violin prodigies, magicians, contortionists, the politicians, blood-sucking cops, vampire heroes in movies, and the day rising with the sun and the night dying with the light. Move on, put up your fight. Ordinary, the op-eds and newspapers and on world and business, read your opinions, tech and science, books and theater education, who's alive, who's dead, who's got a gun to his head, health, sports, art, style, food, travel, and real estate, and knowingly astrology will predict your fate. Have you tasted fig spread on age brie, tasted the yogis, the bhogis, agoras, and kundalini? Please do try. Hurry, hurry, hurry. What's behind the walls in Abu Ghraib? Famines, forest fires, oil spills, earthquakes, cyclones, hurricanes, nature's hammer, hammer sense. Look up, there's the Virgin mourning in a blue dress soaked with blood. Who's telling the truth or a fib? Do you hear Kali's anklets jingling sounds as she dances on continents like a cremation ground? Who's got the loss, who's got the gain? No matter, there's a jaguar in your garage, even though you're stained. UFO sightings, pyramids, deep sea creatures, all ordinary as ordinary can be. Don't forget the shows realer than reality, stars starring in their own obituaries, the gang rapes, narcotics, the hungry still hungry, September 11th, the match fixings, peddling women's bodies, the sex toys, beauty pageants, and the Illuminati, ceasefires, violations, gay rights, abortion, top news stories, the lonely still lonely, shopping and anthropology. What perfume are you wearing, please? Shoot or be shot by the jihadis, it's all for our children's ease. The whole monster of living and dying daily, dying and living. Stand up and tell me you're alive, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Usha. So let me go ahead and introduce our next reader. It's Tori Reynolds. She met Nandini in 2018 at the Bread Loaf Writers Conference where they were roommates. Tori knew they were friends for life when Nandini was happy to hide out in the room together to avoid the famous bread loaf dance parties. Tori's had poems published most recently in Cave Wall, the North Carolina Literary Review, Southwest Review, South Carolina Review, the Greensboro Review, and in anthologies published by Jacquard Press and Eno River Press. Her poems have been finalists for the North Carolina Literary Review's James Applewhite Prize. She did a residency at Vermont Studio Center in 2012. She got over her aversion to dancing by attending the Bread Loaf Writers Conference 2 years in a row, as well as by attending the Frost Place Conference on Poetry in 2018, where they also hold dance parties. Total immersion. When she's not writing poetry, Tori is a clinical psychologist who specializes in trauma. She often gets asked to testify in court about the impact of trauma on death row inmates, rape survivors, and women who have survived domestic violence and killed their batterers. She lives in North Carolina with her partner, the painter John Bierman, who lived in Nyack and showed his work in NYC for many years. Welcome, Tori.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Nandini for asking me to read with you. And thank you, Usha. And thank you to the KGB Bar. Nandini, before I read, I just wanted to say that passage you read about war was really very affecting. And I have a lot of margin notes about it, just how well you captured what it's like to be in the horror of it and the muck of it. I don't know how you do that. And I just found the whole novel, your your ability to empathically enter all these really different experiences of your characters, the women across generations, but also the men in war. Having worked at the VA, I really appreciated that. So just wanted to say
You
that.
do me too much honor.
No, I really, really loved that part. It's funny. I'm glad you read it because it was one that really stood out to me. It's
Thank
very
you so
affecting.
much, Tori. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna whip through 4 poems and introduce each one of them briefly. So this poem is titled Bagatelle. Bagatelle is a very easy task or a thing of little importance. It's also a musical term that's meant to connote a short, light piece, and it's just to set the tone here. So it's going to go by pretty fast. Bagatelle. I've accomplished nothing today. Imagined a poem after spotting a cardinal perched in a red bud. Gush of magenta, prick of fire. My blind desire to show you what I see. I give up. Some pictures shed words like jewels of water rolling off a mallard's emerald feathers. Long ago in art class, the teacher showed us how to make color appear on paper. Simple, she said, just use a crayon. This next poem is called School Shooting, May 4th, 2019. I wrote it after school shooting, and I'm wearing my heart right on my sleeve on this one. We plan to walk to the river later, our bruised routines after small victories and forgiveness. But first, you show me a tiny flaxen frog with golden eyes, an eerie ingot exhumed from its lightless universe. You say, let's look at the world at least this once with golden eyes. I can't breathe, gargle of tears in my throat. I just heard that the boy who threw himself on the boy with the gun was the son of a friend of a friend of a friend. And I know it's naive, but I feel all of us should be that, friends, and maybe also boys. The valves in my heart are leaking something vital. I tell you, I can only see through my hazel eyes, and that walking at all now feels like I'm shutting them against the boy with the brown-haired boy with the gun whose mother I read died 2 years ago, and against the golden-haired boy who was the son of a mother who had a mother. And I think maybe we should all be that, mothers, giving birth to something other than despair or heroes. Of course, I'd never given birth to anything except this, another chance here with you on this golden evening. The next poem I'm reading is called Night Owl. It's about running, going for a run very early in the dark of morning and being attacked by an owl. And it's about other things too. And the other thing that maybe interests poets are just what I was trying to do. I'm trying to, it's written in couplets, but I was really trying to use the syntax of the line and no punctuation at all to get things running together, which was kind of the experience. Night Owl. Remember the time you set out to run in dark, denser than silence? So many nights you'd heard her hoot, clerk of the giant oaks, never thought yourself an intruder, believed you shared her blindness to light. Then one good thump on the head, as swift as the bird of prey she is, mistook your swinging ponytail for a squirrely meal. Or no, she could spot an interloper, because who is more sighted when it comes to blindness? This was just a warning. Stay away from my nest. Spelled in talon scratch. You yelped, what, and scanned the sky. Such weak eyes you have, she swooped once, twice, down again until you threw your hands in the air. You'd been told if chased by a bear, make yourself bigger than the bear. But she wasn't buying your feeble claws, and again she dove, screeching, then darning the dark, escorted you out of her realm fast as you could. You ran towards home as if you'd been touched by the devil or the divine, something that knows better. There's a bruise on the top of your head to prove it. Fear, too, of the once familiar dark. Don't be fooled by the owl you see flying past in morning's haze. She's not heading to sleep. And the last poem I'll read is called Little Book of Angers. Two things. This wasn't written during the pandemic, but it's strange how it kind of captures pandemic time, this weird suspension of time. And then it also is a reminder, for me, it's a reminder. The poem began with a title. I have no idea where it came from or where it was going. And of course, it ended up someplace totally different. And that's my one hope, is that we think we know where we're going and what we're doing, and then we end up hopefully someplace better. Okay, Little Book of Angers. As you can see, this will never be a true story, will always drift, because the cat is climbing all over my keyboard. It's the end, or maybe the beginning, when he settles down on my hands and waits. I'm talking about the little joys, which I really believe in, the fog that socks in to make the familiar harbor disappear. Silence so dense I can hear the mussels breathing underwater and the gulls dropping their crabs on the rock. How I ended up at the ocean, I'll never know. I'm a field person, a hill and dale and hay person, even in the driest of seasons when there's tinder. The cat is always in a fog, at least when he's here with his eyes closed, concentrating on achieving nothing. Every once in a while, he opens them at the sound of something going on in the kitchen, blinks at the clank of the saucer on the stone floor, his seagulls dropping their catch on the rocks. The clatter makes his claws take purchase on my thighs, refreshing. But he goes nowhere because we are lost here together in the cloud bank of potential, the permission of short-sightedness. What might come of this little disappearance or that? I see now I misnamed my efforts at the start, looked too far ahead and behind, had not planned on being plowed in by the moment, this dense, misty surprise that becomes a boat at anchor. Thank you.
Thank you, Tori. That was wonderful. Nandini, do you want to say a few words before you get back into Love's Garden, or do you want to just go straight in? Oh, I think you're muted, Nandini. Let's see, I can't see you.
Sorry, I was just trying
okay.
to breathe too hard or laugh or cry or something. But I do want to say a number of words, though who can say any words like the poets can? And I want to say that I am so truly, truly, truly in seventh heaven that I am reading with my poet friends, because I think we should all take example from the poets who seem to always be either in love or at war, my two favorite themes. And in these two particular poets, and yes, Tori, we are lifelong friends because we did avoid the dancing. I'm so happy. I'm so proud to say that. And Usha, of course, is just she's stellar. She's like a streak of light across the sky. What can I say? Well, her name means dawn, I think. And that is what she is. I see her as this light that lights up the sky. So I feel like I'm hugging my two poet friends by doing this flanked reading. And I want to thank them again. And I want to thank Lori, and I want to thank the KGB Bar and my readers. So I'm going to start again at a place where I left off talking about Amherst. And I want to continue a little bit with where I was, which I can, if I can find now, it would be wonderful. And I have just taken my bookmark out, so just give me a second. This continues from the section about Amherst, and I'm going to read to you a little bit further down. Backdrop of the war. He and Sterling used to pretend that they shaved almost every day like the other fellows. Mongol, mongrel, yellow peril. They'd heard those words in school, in the streets, back home, whispered, flung at them as they expected. They took them in stride. They were not surprised. That was the key thing, not to be surprised or look surprised. They didn't talk back. The teachers wouldn't listen to them. Sometimes even a teacher made fun of their accent. Say, lyrical, the English teacher shouted. Lyrical, 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 imbecile. They didn't talk back in the army either. The commander told them to act like men. 'Cause you fellas are, yellers. And he burst into thigh-slapping laughter at his own joke, giving the cue to the other men. Today, it having rained a lot, the Calcutta sun feels kind. Moist, warm air feels kind too. These days, a few ocean liners still pull in and out of the city docks, loading and unloading batches of, among other things, men and women fresh from Britain. Some are already wilted or withered, but fresh young girls from England are still coming, though less and less, looking for husbands. He has no chance with them. There are cars everywhere. He sees baby Austins, Chevrolets, Packards, and army jeeps taking daredevil chances. Horns blare, tires screech as the inevitable pedestrian tempts death. Women in shiny pencil heels traipse in and out of department stores. Amherst tries to breathe in the day, the light, the air, the sounds, shrill bird cries of rickshaw pullers, vendors, and the occasional palanquin bearer as deeply as possible. At Mpumga, there were times when he'd stop breathing because he was scared the Japs would hear it. This city, this white Calcutta, is paradise by comparison, but maybe not for too long. The curious, knowing, black city prowls right outside, always has. India for Indians, it's 1942. The Quit India movement leaves streets littered with lathis, turbans, flags, posters, the occasional body waiting to be removed. And he notices more and more people begging in the streets. Their bodies are unusually still, only the hands lifted in pleading makes them look like thin, dark birds with long necks and tiny heads. Today, he has an invitation to the Calcutta Club from an old acquaintance, Sunny Roy. He's an old acquaintance because everything before the dank Burmese forest seems eons ago. General wheeler dealer and playboy from a respectable old Calcutta family, born Saurendra Roy. Nice fellow, though too fond of the sauce and a fop, and sometimes Amherst suspects a pansy. He wonders what Sunny Roy's father thinks of his son. And the last section I'd like to read is from a section describing events in Calcutta during the partition, which led to huge riots all across India and tremendous communal violence. And this is the third woman in my saga of three women or three generations of women who I am going to be speaking about. Chapter 58. When the train to Calcutta leaves Siliguri, the platform and train station are hushed. It's still dark. At turns in the hills, the Darjeeling mail looks like a worm with a blazing, smoking head boring through mud. Recently, this country has been betrayed by those same English who knighted Sir Narain Mehta into two independent people, Hindus and Muslims, Indians and Pakistanis. Roma knows about Cyril Radcliffe, a hapless political appointee, an entire stranger to India, no doubt overwhelmed, befuddled, who's drawn a line, wobbling, firm, who knows, across India. He was told to create a new Hinduish India and a Muslimish Pakistan. So he's made the inept surgical cut that's bloodied what used to be thought of as India, like a cut through a Hindu latrine and a Muslim dargah, half of each on one side. The pen is mightier than the sword, after all. There are parallels too. Chandon, butchered like a pig by an unknown blade. This is her husband. The country ripped like old cloth down its middle, her own botcheries of hope. She has trunk called Mashimoni and Harish that she's coming to Calcutta. Harish said she shouldn't be traveling alone. She tells him there's no time for waiting. It's true, and also a lie. Enough asking. And then skipping a few paragraphs. As the train nears Calcutta, passengers get on and off at other stations babbling about terrible trouble in the Northwest, in Delhi, Lahore, Amritsar, even in Calcutta. India and Pakistan have been born, the strange freedom birthed by the great Radcliffe guillotine. There are terrible rumors, corpses, the only passengers on incoming trains, no survivors, death in cul-de-sacs at Land's End. Ancestral hatreds have always bubbled, it seems, just beneath illusory comforts, foolish loves. But Roma doesn't pay any mind. Calcutta is different. Calcutta is, whatever else it is, civilization. Besides, she has nowhere else to go. The train is approaching Howrah Junction. Just outside the station, it slows down. She looks up. Up ahead, she hears bogies uncoupling and coupling, tracks shifting, clanging and grating. This is normal, at last, just normal things, normal sounds. She feels hope spill out as she looks out at that special Calcutta sunset sky splashed with pink, mauve, and yellow on a late summer day. She feels elated, she feels weak, she feels free and sentimental. Let's celebrate independence together, she mutters. You and my country, butchered, betrayed, you have survived, whatever you had to let go. I'm sorry, Chandun. Goodbye, Chandun. I wish we'd been given a bit more time, my dear. There's a sound like chanting or droning, even buzzing, coming from a distance. She can't quite place it. The bogies must now be retracked because the train begins a slow creep forward. The sound can still be heard over axles grinding on slow-moving wheels. It can't be mistaken for the general hum and din of the city. It is something else. The train struggles into the station. Empty, but it feels as though it has been emptied suddenly, as if prepared in haste for impromptu theater. When the train reaches the covered platform, that sudden extinction of sunlight induces momentary blindness. When the train finally screams to a stop, Roma sticks her head over her window looking for a coolie. Surprisingly, no horde instantly surges toward her, no one. The platform is lit only here and there by a sole erratic bulb. The rest is shadow. She steps off the compartment and walks a few paces. She sees a pile of what looks like abandoned luggage, sacks, bundles, around a pillar and despairs. Is there a coolie strike then? It's too hazy to see properly. She feels deeply aggrieved. Is this how independence, hers included, is to be launched? What will she do now? Her two suitcases contain all her worldly possessions and they're too heavy for her to carry. Flies, black flies, clouds of them darting about. Why are there so many flies? She feels sad, a sad welcome back to the city. The great recent upheavals have damaged Calcutta. Riots, refugees, filthy streets, and sewage. Now she has to swat the flies away from her face as she gets closer. She stumbles over something small. She looks down. It's a hand, possibly a woman's, chopped off at the wrist, fingers cactused, clawing inward as if something has been ripped out of them. The stench is much stronger. She sees dark reddish splashes pulsating with black flies. Dark smears on the pillar, around the pillar, bodies, a foot with a sock but no shoe, a head rolled a little away from the heap, a child's head, a face with its eyes gouged out, a woman, young, long-haired, staring wide-eyed at the ceiling. Her breasts are gone. And on that cheery note, I'm going to conclude reading.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you
Thank you.
So, Nandini, it's your first novel. And how lucky are we to be able to join you for this? And also, Tori, thank you for participating. And Usha as well. Do you all have anything you'd like to say before we sign off tonight?
I certainly wanted to say something more about the novel. Just
Please.
this was one of the most shocking experiences to read. The way you pull us through the narrative and the historical events, I learned throughout the novel, and it just never let up, especially this last experience in Calcutta. I didn't even know that this happened. And then that it took place through, you're mostly in Roma, the character of Roma at that point. And that also was, she was a wonderful character. And I think that somebody brought that up at your book launch. She really is a great character. And to have her face this, it was profoundly disturbing, but a great part of the book too.
Thanks, Tori. And it was a kind of a tough choice for me to end the reading there, but I feel like the novel really forces the reader really to look some very truly terrible things right in the eye, because that's what happened, and that's partly what historical fiction does. But I also think that in a way, this is not so much only about history, but about the present and the future, because these things are by no means, as you know, by no means over. And that is the most terrifying thing, is that history continues to repeat itself. But thank you for being kind about the horrors of the story.
Well, we all need to be enlightened. And I'm a huge fan of historical fiction because I feel like there's so much that's gone on in the world that the everyday American is not educated about. So this really brings that particular time to light for us, which is amazing.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, have a great night, and thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with us. Take care.
Take care. Thank you again, KGB Bar. Bye-bye.
Thank you.